Okay, the fluids have been checked. Sure enough, we're in the car. Okay, have the keys in the ignition. It's time to fire this podcast up. I was going to say, I would think it was going to pop up a little bit easier this time because it is warmer out now up here in the great state of Ohio in the northern part of the state. And it's running, and so is this episode number 17 of the WaltPar Podcast, uniting all generations and types of Mopar fans, lovers, and enthusiasts everywhere. From Walter P. Chrysler to today's Mopar and beyond, this is episode number 17 of the WaltPar Podcast. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm your host, Scott Gressler, Mopar since 1960. And I'm ever so grateful again you can join me here for the WaltPar Podcast. If you want to get in touch with me, email waltparpodcast@aol.com. You can find me on most social media, search WaltPar Podcast, and I'm also on YouTube and Rumble, search WaltPar. First things first, I would like to congratulate some clubs out here who are celebrating anniversaries this year. The All Modern Mopars of Ohio, based in Columbus, Ohio, are celebrating their 8-year anniversary. The New York City Mopar Club, based in New York City, New York, on their 10-year anniversary. The Speed Style Mopar Club, based in Jacksonville, Florida, on their 8-year anniversary. And the Mid-Ohio Mopars, based in Worcester, Ohio, on their 34-year anniversary. If you have any big anniversaries coming up for your car club, let me know. WaltParPodcast@aol.com. Well, what started out with a few friends about 45 years ago has now grown into what is Canada's largest all-Mopar car show, and it's called Moparfest. Now, I'm a member of and social media director of the Mid-Ohio Mopars Club based in Worcester, Ohio. At our March 2025 business meeting, we were talking about Mopar show dates for the year. Normally the big ones we talk about, the Nationals, Moparty, and all that. One of those big ones, of course, is Moparfest, which again is Canada's largest all-Mopar car show. And that one came up in the discussion. Now, what do these two things have in common? Well, really nothing that much, but here's what was going on. It was brought up by one of the members of the club during our March 2025 meeting that after United States President Donald Trump said he would like to see Canada become the 51st state of the United States, of course there was an outrage by Canadian citizens, and I can understand that. The member continued to say that the Canadian citizens were so outraged they don't want anyone from the United States to enter Canada or spend American money there. While that may be true for some in Canada, I just couldn't believe myself that was true by everyone there. So I decided to get in touch with the Mopar event staff, and I called the phone number that was on their Facebook page and left a message. I wasn't expecting them to be there when I called. But a few days later, I received a call back from Michelle of the Moparfest staff. We had a great conversation, and she told me all Mopar enthusiasts from the United States, or for that matter, anywhere, are welcome to enjoy Moparfest. They don't have a problem at all up there. They would love to see the American Mopars, and they would love to see you enjoy the models that were sold in Canada as well, like the Chrysler Intrepid, the Chrysler Dynasty, the Chrysler Grand Caravan, the Dodge Wayfarer of the 1950s, and of course the Fargo trucks. Who can forget them? So please, they're wanting you to come. They want you to enjoy yourselves. They want to make sure everybody has a good time talking Mopars up there and enjoying the cars and the fun. Moparfest this year will be held on October 16th and 17th, 2025, in their same location in New Hamburg, Ontario. Now, you can go to the website moparfest.com for more information or click a link on their Facebook page. That's going to be a busy 3 weeks in a row. First off, Mopar Madness at 42, which includes our Mid-Ohio Mopar show. That's on the first weekend in August. The second weekend in August, is the Mopar Nationals in Columbus, Ohio. And then this one would be the Mopar Fest in New Hamburg, Ontario. So lots of shows to go to. Of course, at the end of this podcast, I will be going through the Mopar calendar. Now, during, I think, was the fall of last year, I was getting a list of Mopar clubs put together so I can contact them to let them know of the WaltPar Podcast. Now, one of the clubs was the granddaddy of all Mopar clubs, the Walter P. Chrysler Club. And it was Bill Adams Jr., the national president of the WPC Club, who got back to me. But I didn't get back to him right away. It was all my fault. I should have known better. I've told you before, I am a terrible manager of time. But he did message me back again this spring wanting to talk to me. So I gave him a phone call, and I was so grateful for that phone call because Mr. Adams was just a little thing to go back on. Mr. Adams was a guest on the Talking Mopars podcast with Chris Albrecht back in November of 2022. Now, if you have the time, take a listen to it. It was a great podcast, and look it up. Now, in case if you're wondering where Chris has been, he's now taking another route in what he wants to do. He has taken Talking Mopars off the podcast platforms he was on, but those great podcasts are still available on YouTube, so please make sure you look him up. Now, Mr. Adams loved my slogan or mission of uniting all generations and types of Mopar fans, lovers, and enthusiasts everywhere. And he, like I, wanted to find a way to expand on it. Now, Bill and I are concerned and know there are some serious questions we need to ask ourselves about the preservation of the car hobby and the history of the automobile, and I myself really don't have any answers on what to do. It's such a wide subject. We all have our interests in it, and I just don't know what to do, and we need some suggestions if we can. I'll be more than happy to get them out on later episodes of the podcast. Now, as each year goes by, more cars and more model years are hitting the roads, and that gives more people more ideas what to drive. Unfortunately, it also gives you more ideas of what not to drive and what will be happening to the vehicles that the future generations don't want to drive. This is a concern of Mr. Adams, my guest on episode of the WaltPar Podcast today, on episode 17, and me. We'll let you know who the guest is in a moment. And I hope to bring it to life in future episodes of the WaltPar Podcast. Now, I am planning on, and I have to get in touch with these people, like I said before, the National Dodge Brothers Club, the cars built from 1914 to 1928. They will be having their convention just south of where I live. They'll be in Berlin, Ohio, pronounced like Berlin, Germany, but we call it Berlin. And the National DeSoto Club will be having their national meet in Akron, Ohio, which is 35 miles slight northeast of me. So that will be part of it. We still like to hear what you have to say about the older cars. But here's the thing. Several problems out there. They're not really problems. It's just how people are. To me, the brand loyalty of every day is now in the past. You've heard me say before, the 1950s and 60s, up until about 1975 when things were starting to change, most of the makes and models had their two-doors, their four-doors, their convertibles, and their station wagons. And so therefore, you could stick with General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, and buy different vehicles and still fulfill all your vehicle needs. Nowadays, you can't do that. There's certain like for instance, the Dodge Charger is the only one out there. Now, people may not want an SUV. They might want an SUV for their everyday car. They might just something else to drive. Dodge doesn't offer everything. Stellantis doesn't offer everything, and neither does GM or Ford. It's all specialized now, so what might be good for one brand may not be good for another. And so there might be some model loyalty maybe, but no brand loyalty. And once that model's gone, then who knows, you might go to another brand, because if you remember, a lot of people, including myself, were not happy when the V8s were done at Stellantis. And now people they're not going to be looking for a Charger electric. Some might not, but they're not going to go directly to a Hornet either or whatever. They're going to find something else that has a V8 if they wanted a V8 before. And there's not that many left out there. In fact, the only thing left are really the performance models of the Mustang GT, GTD, and the Corvette. They're not putting any V8s in any Traverses last I checked. So there's no more brand loyalty. You pretty much have to go out and find what you're looking for, no matter the brand, and hopefully it fits your needs. And to most people out there, a car is a car. They don't worry about, I got to buy. They're not like me where they say, okay, what's Stellantis has to offer? What's the Mopar brands out there, and see what I like the most? Nope. People are going for what they want because there's an awful lot out there to choose. So brand loyalty is pretty much out the door for the most part as far as fulfilling everyone's transportation needs in one household. So a car is pretty much a car. And here's the thing that's really disappointing too, that most new car dealerships nowadays, in my opinion, show no excitement on the new vehicles that they sell. I mean, it's really sad. I mean, you go to a Chevrolet dealer and what do they have? They have they buy used Bentleys. We have to go out of town to get an oil filter for it. But they keep buying all these cars just for the sake of selling it. It's just like the new vehicle brands are just a side, and there's no excitement in what they do to bring out the fun in these cars. They don't do that anymore. They're just there. They just sell, and that shows no excitement either. That does not help the car's future to me at all either. Now, of course, here's another thing to think about too, is when someone finds a car that they choose to modify, do they ask themselves, how does this affect the hobby as a whole? Do you have to have, for instance, a Roadrunner, a very nice Roadrunner complete, to thoroughly tear apart just to resto mod it, when instead they could have used a sports satellite and put Roadrunner nameplates on it? Because remember, a stock vehicle is only stock once. Now, before I go any further, I want to say this. What car you own is yours to do with what you ever want to do with it. It's your money. You do with it what you want. I'm never going to tell you to your face that you shouldn't have done that to your car. It is your car. I didn't go to previous owners for me to do what I wanted with mine. You didn't either. You shouldn't have to, and you shouldn't have to hear it from anybody else, including myself. But we can give a general opinion of what's going on. I mean, I've seen people take gorgeous, perfect cars and tear them apart for their own needs instead of doing some research and see what else they could find out there. Maybe a body replacement. Maybe they could find a sports satellite, like I said. The shell is the same. Work on that and get it modified. Now, of course, if a Roadrunner or a muscle car already has the engine out or whatever, then that may not make a difference, because I'm worried about what stock numbers matching and the like. And if it's been modified and all this stuff even before you buy it, I'm not going to feel so bad. But if it's something that was like totally immaculate, totally matching and everything else, and they just tear it apart just for the sake of customization, please do your research, because these cars are not lasting if they go for that. And my personal question to that is, what will these cars be worth? These customized cars that are out there, how are they going to be worth in 10 to 15 years from now? They were all built to the customer's own personal specs. They weren't built generally, which of course it's the way it should be when you're customizing a car. But how much will they be worth? And will somebody want to keep it going? Or maybe they'll take that base and do something else with it themselves. So you just never know. But all this affects the car hobby, what to look for, what we can find, and what we want to do with it. Another thing to help promote, what are you doing yourselves, or what are we doing ourselves to promote the car hobby? Now, I myself, I'm letting more kids than I used to sit in my car, my Cordoba. Let it show off, let them touch the steering wheel, and they go, wow, and look at the old instrument panel and everything else. Are you showing up at car shows or cruise-ins, especially the ones that are held in downtown streets? I say the downtown street ones because in most cases, that is where the general public normally shows up to look at the cars and trucks. And they can ask you questions, and they don't normally go to the ones that are at the parts stores or maybe a few other places. But if it's a downtown show, a lot of people show up and look over the cars thinking what they used to own. I hear a lot about that with the Cordoba. But, yeah, that's one of the best places to do that. Hopefully that will get someone interested into the hobby. Now, some of you go down there, they don't want anybody even near their car. But I think I look at it this way. That one fingerprint that you may have found on your car could lead to someone who may want their own car to have fun with and grow the hobby. Maybe after they looked at yours, maybe they didn't talk to you, but it sparked a little thing in their head to do something about it. Now, are we also out there asking people who own something completely different about their car? Because a lot of us out there, we tend to only stick to what we like, and we talk to people who also have cars like that. And sometimes we need to branch out and talk to other people. I was at a car show last Saturday at a church in Medina, Ohio, and I saw two gentlemen. They were in their upper 20s or lower 30s, and they drove a Ford and a Mercury from the 1950s. Now, what I should have done, and I didn't, it's my own fault, but I should have gone over there to say hello to them and see what they think about the cars and ask about them, but I didn't, and I should have. It was very encouraging, though, to see the younger generation getting into some of the older cars like that. There's someone who showed up at our car show late a couple years ago at the fairgrounds when we had it at the Wayne County Fairgrounds. This young kid came in a 1960 Dodge Pioneer. And just to see that is just, that shows they're showing some support for the car hobby. They want to keep the old cars going, and that's a good thing. Are we going to the car museums that are in our area where we live? I'm guilty. I haven't. I should go see those cars. Museums that stay in business keep the cars there, keep them preserved. Because remember, a lot of these museums are privately owned. And since they are privately owned, if they're no longer, if the owners go or if the organization has them, then don't get any admission money, maybe they'll be selling those cars just like we would. So keep that in mind too. Anything you can think of to help keep our hobby alive, it's great. And give me some ideas, please, to think about what you do to keep the hobby alive or what anybody else could do. Do you have more ideas? Please let me know. Email me at waltparpodcast@aol.com or direct message me on my social media. Search WaltPar Podcast. Now to our guest. I first heard of Frank Rhodes Jr. on an episode of the Mopar Collector's Guide Mopar, that's M-O-P-R TV channel on YouTube. Now, the Mopar Collector's Guide's publisher, Rob Wolf, is the host of that YouTube channel, and he interviewed Frank at Chrysler's at Carlisle in 2024. Frank Rhodes Jr. is the great-grandson of the founder of Chrysler, Walter P. Chrysler. And if you haven't, I encourage you to watch this YouTube video. You will see how much Frank loves what Walter P. Chrysler has done in a lot of different areas. And Frank shows you his crusade to preserve automotive history. He has all kinds of scrapbooks. He's going to have all kinds of articles. As you know, this is the 100-year anniversary of Chrysler. The Walter P. Chrysler Club will also be having their convention. This will all be held at Chrysler's at Carlisle this year, which is the third weekend per se. I got to relook up the date, but it's in July. The first full weekend past the 4th of July. Look that up. There's plenty of ads out there on social media. They're really advertising it with the dates. I'm not sure if I'll be able to go. I'm going to say I doubt it, but I would love to go. It is 6.5 hours away from where I am in Worcester, probably 7 the way I drive. But and I do have other things I need to get done. And my wife doesn't drive, so I got to think of her in this. And I'd love to go, but I'm not sure if I will. But Frank had all kinds of displays there, scrapbooks, pictures, and this year the Carlisle will also have like army tanks because Chrysler was huge in defense. And but he will be there as well at Chrysler at Carlisle this year for the 100th anniversary of Chrysler. So please look him up. But today, on this episode number 17, I have him here for an interview. I did this 3 weeks prior to when I am recording this, which is May 16th or May 15th is when I'm doing this. But please stand by as we have our interview with Frank Rhodes Jr. on episode 17 of the WaltPar Podcast.
Okay.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I had Robert Soule of the Walter P. Chrysler Club Southeast Tennessee chapter says, I should call Frank Rhodes up. I should be talking to Frank Rhodes. Then Robert S. Miller of Mopar Insiders, he said the same thing. And finally, Bill Adams Jr., president of the whole Walter P. Chrysler Club organization. They all said, I got to talk to Frank Rhodes. And so here it is, ladies and gentlemen. I am here with the one, the only, Frank Rhodes. Frank, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, and I'm looking forward to this interview and talking Mopar.
Yes, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm obviously a Chrysler fan. My grandparents passed away around 1980 or late 79. And at that point, I was very concerned about Chrysler. And my grandmother told me one thing that stuck with me forever. She said, do what you can to keep the engine running. And at that time, it really didn't sink in. But as the years have gone on, it really sinks in because Chrysler's had a few very tough times. But I look at them, they're like they have 9 lives. They just keep coming back. And I just feel like Chrysler will always come back. But as a whole, all the Mopar fans need to fight for the brand. And there's so many people out there that just love the brand so much and they care about it. And we need to let people know because this is American history right here. And Chrysler has so much to offer. And there's so much history that people don't even know about. So I'm going to try to, my goal is to let people know more and more about what Chrysler, my great-grandfather Walter P. Chrysler did, and I just think it's very important. So
there you go. Now, in my life, I've never met my great-grandparents on my dad's side, and I only knew my great-grandmothers on my mom's side. Did you ever meet Walter himself?
No, he died in, he had a stroke in 1938, and he passed away in 1940. I was born in 1958. So I'm a little beyond that, but I
Yes.
did know I knew his son, Walter Jr., and not that well, but I knew him. But my grandmother, Bernice, is the one that really, really taught me a lot of cool things about Chrysler. And it's interesting because over the years I've been just studying, and everything she did revolved around Chrysler. In their house in Maryland, they had air conditioning throughout the whole place. It was a central air conditioning system. And today I remember they had a John Deere combine. And at the time, it was one of those old looking things that had the round back on it. And I know that it had a Chrysler engine in it because I've been studying Chrysler Industrial Division. And they made engines for those. And knowing my grandmother, it probably was one of those. They had pumps on the farm. Anything their boat was Chrysler inboards. They had anything to do with Chrysler, they were very involved. And even the trucks on the farm. And today, I wish I'd known back then about all this that I know today, but I'm slowly learning about all the great things that Chrysler did. That people just don't know about.
Yeah, and the thing is, even through a lot of I'm not sure about before I was born in 53. And all my life, there has been, with the exception of a couple pockets in the country, but all my life, Chrysler, Plymouth, Dodge trucks have always had a huge case of having disrespect. And to me, they're reliable, they're durable, they're fast, and they've had problems, but so do all the brands. But it seems like they always magnified with Chryslers, and I hated that with a passion. And I've taken so many people during high school and college everywhere, but yet they said I was the one that drove the piece of junk. So I just don't get it. But Chrysler does need to, we need to show what Chrysler has done. And it's not just the cars. It's not just a Hemi, no matter what generation it is or whatever. There's a lot of cool things about Chrysler that people don't know. They were the first with four-wheel drive. The lean burn system brought computers to cars and just all kinds of things like that. What have you been finding? Go ahead, Frank.
Well, one thing, I'm a history buff, and I do a lot of studying with World War II. And, Chrysler worked at General Motors. In fact, he was the one that was hired there to save the Buick brand, which was really doing poorly. And he brought the production figures up. And in fact, when he left General Motors, Buick was making more money than any of the divisions. The problem is that Durant was spending money faster than Chrysler could make it. I mean, he had these like a tractor that was supposed to resemble horses with reins on it. I mean, he did all these things that Chrysler didn't agree with. So what at General Motors, Chrysler ran into a guy named K.T. Keller, who eventually became the president of Chrysler. And I've talked to their family. They're really great folks. I mean, he passed away years ago. But what he was involved in, and they were involved at General Motors, of all of the during World War I, all of the military stuff, the engines for anything, they were just very involved in that. So when Chrysler passed away and K.T. Keller took over at Chrysler, he was really knowledgeable about the military business. And so during the war, Chrysler built just tons of ordnance. It's just amazing what they did. They built so much stuff, as did all of our auto manufacturers and folks. But I think that's an important part. And out of that, this is really interesting. After the war, when the German scientists came over here, I guess it was Operation Paperclip. And, our country was like, they knew a lot of these guys had issues, but they didn't care because they had the knowledge. So they brought them over here. And they wanted to start in the rocket business. And Chrysler was the one that came up to the plate because they were very involved in the war. And in fact, I interviewed a guy. He passed away, Magnus von Braun, who was Warner von Braun's brother, and he was the one that came out of when the Germans were in the hills. I guess it was Austria or Germany, wherever they were. He was the one that they sent down to talk to the Americans because he could speak English. So he rode a bike down the hill, and to make a long story short, they got him out, and we were like in a rush against the Russians to get them out of here because we wanted the knowledge. So anyhow, Chrysler was hired to start in the rocket business, and they used the original V2 rockets, and then they formed other rockets. And Chrysler was the one, I guess it was Rocketdyne, that made the engines, and Chrysler was the contractor for all these early rockets. And as the years went on, they were hired. They built the booster for the one of our main rockets before the Saturn V. And it's amazing the history that Chrysler has in the rocket business and in the space. I mean, Chrysler built the rocket that sent the first man around the Earth. I mean, these are things that people don't even know. And the Mercury 1, they built that, and it's just a part of Chrysler history and I want to do a story on that. I've met a lot of the engineers, and I have documents, and I'm going to slowly do a great story on the Chrysler space program, and they have the missile program. They were very adamant about that. When I would talk to the engineers, they would go, "No, we were the missile division." And then the other guys would go, "No, we're the space division." And I have this Chrysler flag, at the Pentastar, and it has all the signatures of those guys that were in the program. It's really, really cool. So
Very
that's a
cool.
part of Christ. That's a part of Chrysler history that I think we need to study. But World War II is really important, and then all the innovations that Chrysler made. So we can maybe elaborate on that in a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Now let me ask you this. It sounds like to me that while all the auto manufacturers did their part for the war, it sounds like to me Chrysler not only built, they designed more than the other two manufacturers. Am I correct or not?
Well, I don't know. I can't answer that correctly, but I can say one thing. I know they were hired to make a lot of ordnance that other manufacturers couldn't keep up with. So, like the engines for the B-29 Super Fortress, they were hired to make those. All the ships, they made what was it called now? I can't think of. The compasses that would go around the world that would tell due north. Like today, you have a phone, okay, and you can see where north is. But back then, the technology wasn't as advanced, and they would have in the binnacle up in the main ship, they would tell due north and all that. And if you're over in the islands around Japan and those areas, you couldn't find it. So Chrysler built all of that. It was Sperry, that's what it was. The Sperry company made all this equipment, but Chrysler was contracted to build it. And I have some of their equipment that has Chrysler Corporation written on it, and it has with permission of the Sperry company. I mean, those are things. They built billions of bullets. All the Sherman tanks, they built a lot of those. They built the Boffer guns for the ships. So I can't answer that directly if they designed it. I do know that the atom bomb, they had something to do with the diffusers. And with Chrysler, they were able to bring that product to market like with 6 to 12 months earlier than it would have been. So, they just did a lot. I mean, I could just go on and on and on. Plus all the Army trucks they made and, the ambulances. It's just a part of history that, and I don't want to elaborate on World War II, but one thing I will say is with Chrysler and all the other guys, auto manufacturers, they saved Europe from tyranny. I mean, think about it.
Yes,
The French,
they did.
the Italians, all those countries were saved because of Chrysler, Ford, General Motors, White Motor Company. I think White made half tracks or something. I don't know, and we built everything here. That's the other thing. That's why we got to get back to that. We got to start building things because, you could go when the government came in, they had unlimited checks to build these things. And you could go anywhere in this country and you could get anything you wanted right away. And they did it. And Chrysler had the plants, they had the manufacturing, and it's just amazing. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything. There's so much history there that's just beyond just a lot of history. So
yeah, now you're pushing World War II, which is all very true. But what people also don't know about defense was it wasn't until the early 80s, maybe a little bit before, Chrysler kept working in the defense industry. They had to sell it to a company called General Dynamics when they were having bankruptcy problems in the late 70s. And so Chrysler had been building defense all those years on beyond that.
Well, they built. You're right about that. They said back then that was the crown jewel because to get the loan under Lee Iacocca, they had to sell the defense division. And when I went up, I met Mr. Iacocca. I went up there. That's the one thing I wanted to do is go for a tank ride. So I went out there and I got a ride around the track on one of the tanks, which was sort of cool. But the tanks were built up in Detroit, but most of them were built, I think, down in Newark. The Newark Assembly was a big tank. They built a lot of the tanks down, especially for the Vietnam era. They built a lot of ordnance there. And Chrysler was still very, very much involved. And I know in Vietnam, they sold a lot of the vans and the trucks and the Army and the M37. The M37 was one of the biggest vehicles they had. They built thousands of those. So yes, you're right. They were involved until 1980 and when they got out. So.
Yeah, I remember I saw a Dodge A100 pickup truck in the newspaper that was in Vietnam. So, yes, they had all kinds of things over there. So
they built like this huge forklift that's really cool. a big, massive forklift. I mean, it could, I don't know how many pounds. It was the biggest forklift I've ever seen. Chrysler built a lot of those. So,
Yep.
and all their equipment, the move tanks and trucks and all those. Oh, and then another thing is people don't know, they built at Dulles Airport, they built all the transport carriers and I've been on one years and years ago. They would, they would roll up, everyone would get on this transport unit and it would take you out to the plane. And I remember was in one about 25 years ago, and it said built by Chrysler Corporation. And I don't know if they use those anymore, but they're huge, and they were built by the Space Division, as I recall.
So there you go, folks. There's a lot more to Chrysler than you think. They were also big in industrial.
Oh, yes.
Until about, let me see, that generator I talked to you earlier about, I think was built in 78. Of course, it had to be, because that's when the 440s were gone after that. But go into some industrial history.
Okay. So I have in fact, I just had it restored. It'll be out on one of these magazines soon, but I have a Chrysler air raid siren. And they made those after the war, and then they made a lot of them during the Cold War. And it's really neat. It's got a Hemi V8 in it. Now, the Hemi, if I'm not mistaken, it came out in 1951 or 52. It was right in that era. But anyhow, the siren that I have was built in 1952, and I think they made about 300 to 400 of these things, and it's huge, and it's loud. I mean, I don't know how many decibels it puts out, but these were in like cities, especially on the coast. If there was an air raid or there was some kind of attack during the Cold War. So Chrysler built the industrial engines, and one other thing was they had a logo. It was called Horsepower with a Pedigree, and it was really, isn't that neat? And it had these reins that would have 3 horses that were just barreling forward. And that's a part of history that Chrysler, that needs to be talked about, because they built so many they built industrial engines for like pumps for crops, engines for like cement mixers, engines for like, those units that pull boats out of the water, the boat lifts.
Yes.
They built those. They built generators, all kinds of stuff. And I just think that's a part of history that people need to find out about. I mean, there's so much. Chrysler was like one of the biggest industrial companies in the world. And it just sort of slowly people nibbled away at it. But, we got to come back. And as I said, Chrysler has 9 lives, and everyone's been working really hard to save the brand. And that's so great to see all the excitement out there. And you mentioned something earlier about, people saying that, well, Chrysler, they have problems with this and that. Well, all manufacturers have problems.
Yes.
I mean, that's just, they all do. And one thing I would hope that they would do in the modern age here is get a little simplicity to all this electronic stuff, because in the next 20 years, if you need to replace your box or your all that stuff in the car, you might not be able to get it anymore, and it's just going to ruin the quality of the cars. I want simplicity. I don't want all this electronic stuff. I'm sure some people just love it. They love all the gadgets, but let's go back to basics, because I think that would help out with a lot of the problems they're having today. All the companies are having. Well, it just makes it so expensive.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is they put so much electronics in it, it's actually getting easier to steal them. Because they're hacking them from the computers, because, people can use their apps on their smartphones and do this and that with their car. And guess what? If they can do it, so can somebody else. And then there goes your car. And the thing is, I even thought myself, it's like, let's take the first year for the Hellcat, I think was 2016. Let's go to 2066. And that thing's been sitting in a barn for over 40 years. Would you be able to restore that car?
A lot easier than you would today.
That's what I'm saying. If that 2016 Hellcat was in 2066, sat in a barn for 40 of those years, would you be able to restore that 2016 car?
It's really interesting that you just brought that up. I restored this siren, And oh, by the way, it's mounted on a 1940 Dodge cab over. It's really cool.
Yes, that would
So,
be.
but the thing is, we were trying to find parts for it, and the guy, as I said, the article is going to be coming out in Mopar Collector's Guide in a couple months. But the guy that helped me restore this, you can find the parts. The fluid drive, he found some guy out in the Midwest that could rebuild the fluid drive.
Really? From the 50s, yes.
Yes, the exhaust manifolds. Okay, they were busted at the seam or whatever, and I wanted to get good stuff. Well, we found an original set of manifolds from that era that are on this truck. You can find the stuff, and you have to know where to go. And anything, that's the thing in this country. There's people that can rebuild things, but it's getting harder and harder to find. But you just got to search, and you got to do the homework. And, these parts are out there. The parts are there. You've just got to do your homework. Don't give up. Any person out there that's trying to restore a Chrysler product, there are people that can help you. You just have to do a little homework and a little digging.
I remember when I went to my first Mopar Nationals clear back in 1984, the big thing is you did not have the internet back then. So when you think you found a barn find, that's a rare one, you'd think it was the last one. Far from it, because now look what people are finding now thanks to the internet. So
I know. And
it's just, I knew there was so much more out there, but how to find it was going to be a different thing to see. But I knew there was more out there than what they were saying back in 1984. This is the last one. There's no more anywhere. But there's plenty of stuff out there. And even when you look at graveyard cars and just watch one episode and look out in the graveyard and see all those cars waiting to get fixed up, they're everywhere. So
now I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
When I go to, especially Carlisle, when I go to, especially Mopar meets, these Mopar guys are diehard Mopar people. I'm just telling you, you can see how they just love their cars. They're into it so much. Are the Ford and the General Motors people that way, or is there just a different kind of mindset with the Mopar folks and the other? I mean, I know that there's lots of hardcore Ford people out there and General Motors people. I have a group around here that's into these Corvettes. But I just sense that the Mopar people, there's some kind of something that brings them all together that's special. That's the way I see it.
I do not. There are hardcore Mopar enthusiasts, but unlike the Ford and GM people, and actually Chevrolet is separate, Corvette is separate, then there's the rest of the brands as far as enthusiasts go. But with Chrysler, my problem is, and again with my motto, uniting, is they just like that kind of Chrysler or that kind of Mopar. They don't care about, like I actually have a 76 Cordoba and a 1971 Dodge Demon 340. But I'm more open-minded. I like to see what's going on because I love all things Mopar. In fact, I would even tell you, I'm not going to tell you over the airwaves, but privately I would tell you what Mopars not to buy so I know you enjoy the product like I do. But what happens is like you take classic muscle, they won't look at anything else. They won't look at anything newer. They won't look at anything older. The 50s, modern muscle, the current Gen 3 Hemi type cars. Well, they're not current anymore, but I saw these kids at a Cars and Coffee meet. It was actually an all makes, but they would come in their modern Mopar, look at other modern Mopars, and then leave. They wouldn't look at anything else that was a Mopar. And that's one of the faults that Mopar has. Ford people are more united. Chevrolet people are more united. And, of course, Pontiac and Oldsmobile, they're no longer made. But there's still a uniting there where with Chrysler, we're so fragmented. We only like one thing of Chrysler. That individual likes that kind of Chrysler, and then that's it. They don't care about anything else but that. And that I differ you with on. But those groups that do get together, even though it might be their separate group, yes, they are very dedicated.
Well, that makes a lot. I asked you the wrong kind of question because when I go up to Carlisle and a lot of these events, they're into the muscle cars. I get that. But with the older stuff, I think it's more of education. People need to know what's out there because they really don't know what's out, or some
Mm-hmm.
people don't. And I see what you're saying because the early Chryslers are so special. So we need to educate. We need people to know what's out there. That's like at the auto show this year. They have the 100th anniversary. They have the first Chrysler there. So maybe people need to know more about what Chrysler did in the early days. And it makes sense. You know, I get what you're saying because I went to a few events where they have all these Imperials and stuff, but you don't see a lot of young people there. And I get what you're saying. The muscle is just a part. But what I'm trying to say is that I just think Mopar people, no matter what it is, if it's muscle, the early days or the later days, I just think, in my opinion now, I think people are very dedicated to the brand, no matter what era it is.
Right, but yeah, and you are so correct in asking that question. I'm just saying they are dedicated to the brand, but they're only dedicated to that certain era, and the other eras don't matter. And that's what we got to bring together is what Chrysler has done as a whole, where someone who's in a modern muscle car goes to say hello to someone who's in an Airflow. And
I understand exactly what you're saying. I get it. I get it there. Well, so what would be the difference in a Ford or a Chevrolet guy? They care about it all the brands.
pretty much. Now, here's one thing I did notice though is Chrysler has had a very diverse history. You know, industrial, marine, defense. But in their cars and trucks alone, they've been very, they've done all kinds of different things. The four cylinders, people don't know it, but there was a high performance flathead 6, a high performance slant 6, and there's all kinds of different engines that they've done. The 2225 turbos, the early Hemi V8s, but they've had all kinds of different powertrains, front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, and Ford comes into a close second because they've done some stuff too through their SVO program. But all the others have pretty much stuck to either a 6-cylinder. I mean, there's some 4-cylinders out there, don't get me wrong, but the majority of them are just 8-cylinder cars. No matter the year, it's always an 8-cylinder car. And that's one of the problems with Chrysler is you take the front drivers from the 80s and the 90s, that's going to be a different group. The SRTs from the modern muscle with the Hemis, that's another group. Maybe there's a group that has Crossfires, another one that likes the early Hemis, the Virgil Exner design era, Airflows or whatever. That's what fragments us apart because Chrysler has done so much diversity in trying to get good out of everything they can, where the others have been able to just flow with a V8. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. So are you saying that the others didn't have as many divisions or didn't spread themselves thin over all these ideas? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so that's could be good or bad. I mean, Chrysler did spread themselves all over the place. I get that. And I just think all the stuff they've done is wonderful. So I got a question for you. What is the most recognizable motor from GM, Ford, and Chrysler that comes to your mind?
Okay. Well, obviously the 426 Hemi is Chrysler.
And Ford, don't they have what's their new motor today called? They have a special motor.
Well, the trucks have the Godzilla, but you're talking the Fox motors.
Okay. So you got Godzilla and Fox. And what does General Motors have?
General Motors has not, well, you got to remember with General Motors, when our Dodge dealer switched to Pontiac Oldsmobile, and they were like 5 different car companies, Chevrolet, Pontiac, Oldsmobile, Buick, Cadillac, and GMC. And the thing is, in 1972, I worked at a Pontiac Olds dealer. If I needed to get a fender for a Buick, I could not order it because I'm a GM dealer. I was a Pontiac Olds dealer. I had to buy it from the Buick dealer. Where with Chrysler, I was able to buy anything I wanted from Chrysler.
Wasn't that a good thing or not?
That was a great thing what Chrysler did. I can get anything I want, but GM, you couldn't do that. So to answer your question, as far as a GM engine, there was Buick. There was all kind of different brands had different engines. Because if you remember in the 70s, the late 70s, when someone put a Chevrolet engine in a Buick, they about went haywire. Because GM was trying to do what Chrysler has always been doing.
Okay, so that's what I'm trying to get at is that out of all the motors, Ford has a motor right now. It's doggone, it's on the tip of my head. They're using it today. I can't remember the name, but it's a brand new motor. But nothing has the name recognition that the Hemi has.
Absolutely,
Nobody.
Yes.
Not one person. That's why I was so concerned when they started getting rid of these Hemi motors, is that they're getting rid of the crown jewel of motors. I mean, Hemi is it. I remember during one of the wars we had 30 years ago, someone up in Detroit said on these tanks, does it have a Hemi? I mean, they don't mention any of the other brands.
Nope.
So Chrysler needs to stick with that power plant because it's got the name recognition. And I think the Hemi came out of airplane engines back in the early days, wasn't it? Because the hemispherical design. But
there was another manufacturer, I think one more manufacturer actually had it in the teens. But they got rid of it they didn't have it that long. I forget which manufacturer it was.
It was one of the really specialty brands that cost a lot of money.
Yes. And now the thing is, when it comes to the Hemis, Frank, and my listeners have heard this before, Robert has, we should be already 6 years into driving a Gen 4 Hemi.
Mm-hmm.
The Gen 3 Hemis, which they just discontinued, came out 20 years before that in the trucks.
Yes.
And then a year or so later, they were put into 300s and the Magnums and an 06 in the Chargers. But that engine's been around for over 20, and government regulations made it tough. It does on all the manufacturers. But they needed to have a 4th gen Hemi that was more fuel efficient, lighter weight, lighter materials, but just as powerful, if not more powerful. And then that would have kept the momentum going. I mean, I hear these people say, well, they could still pay Tesla for those credits for paying Tesla, a competitor, millions of dollars just to keep an old engine running. They, during the FCA years, as far as I'm concerned, they were just riding a gravy train. Where they just, we can just keep this engine up. People are buying it. Don't need to do anything. And then we had to keep paying these credits. It's the only thing that I thought Carlos Tavares ever did with sense was say, we're not going to pay for that anymore. But they didn't have a replacement either. And they needed to build a Gen 4 Hemi, and it should have been out already in the cars, and it could have been small enough to even fit in the new Charger. I don't know on that, but... Yes.
Well, I know they're working on something now. Look, at least they've made a turnaround, okay? And they've made that because Mr. Tavares wanted to get rid of. They wanted to go all this electric stuff, which I wrote some articles on Mopar Insiders about 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. That a lot like Toyota is one of them. They said that, and they're right. And even Tavares said this, that governments make decisions, and I get it because they say, look, we're going to go electric. And then they gave all this money to these manufacturers to do all this electric stuff. And now look where we are. There's not a lot of charging stations and all that kind of stuff. And I just think that it was pushed too fast. I mean, look, we came out with the electric, what was it, the Electrobat in 1902?
Yes.
And how long did that last? And then I think in the 70s, now Chrysler had a little program. I remember before Fiat came along, they had these electric cars they were building. They were doing something about it.
They had the ES body minivan.
Yes, but that was before the one. Yes, they did. They had, and those are hard to find. I think they made 100 of them or something.
Yep.
But they made another They had 3 electric vehicles back around 2000. And when Sergio Marchione came in, he eliminated that. But they were working on electric stuff back then. So Chrysler has always been innovative and trying to push the envelope on all these different products. So I got to give them credit. But another thing I like to go back to is when they sold to the they sold out to the Germans. I was a little upset about that. I mean, I was just like, why do we have to do that? We were making like Chrysler at the time was like the hottest. There was articles out, the hottest car company on the planet. They had $10 billion worth of cash, and then this guy came in and sold it. And I don't know. I just maybe he didn't get along with Bob Lutz. Who knows what was going on? But that sort of just put a damper on things back
Big
then.
time.
So, for example, one thing I remember, Chrysler had this big deal with Harley Davidson. They had a truck and they had all this Harley. I remember you could buy these Harley Davidson little motorcycles with Dodge. Well, as soon as they sold to the Germans, people like that said, the heck, we're not doing business with them anymore. I mean, you could see the writing on the wall.
Yes.
So Chrysler's had to fight for every sale. And another thing is, they let all these other companies come into this country, and now, with all these tariffs and things going on, these companies are going to have to build their product here. That's been a problem because all these other manufacturers from around the world have come in here and they're just pushing their products. I don't know how they sell them at lower prices. I just don't know. And that's a problem right there in itself. So Chrysler needs to like really push. And I think they're going to come out with some new products that are great. And I'm very, very hopeful. And I know there's a lot of support out there. I just know it.
The support is there, no doubt. It's just, Carlos, he kept delaying it and delaying and delaying. And it was just announced that Tim Kuniskis, the Ram CEO, is going to have 25 product announcements in the next 18 months. And with that, and then Christine Fuel said there will be a revised minivan and one more model coming out at least.
Well, that's a good thing. I'm
Yes.
glad they're doing it. And I'm really, really happy that they're keeping the brand because look, so many of our brands in this country are gone. We're going to have more foreign auto manufacturers here than domestic. I mean, all we have is Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. Who else is there? And then there's like 10 other brands. So we've got to fight for every sale, and we have to educate people about our brands and what they bring to America and how important they are to save those brands.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, one of the problems I see, Frank, is during this, it actually started changing, I think, like in the middle 70s. As I was growing up in the 50s and 60s, all the manufacturers, they had, of course, it was just full-size cars in the 50s, but the 60s, there was different size cars. But still, they all had their two-door sedan, two-door hardtop, four-door sedan, four-door hardtop, convertible, and station wagon for each model line. And then they had the different models for the price classes. In 1970, so that means if you wanted to be a Mopar enthusiast, you can buy everything for the family as well as the business. Same with GM and Ford. You can buy the car, you can buy the truck, and still be a family car, a fun car, or whatever, and still be a true Mopar, Ford, or GM enthusiast. But that has gone by the wayside because they started specializing in certain brands. They weren't standardizing. And now you look at even the Stellantis line alone. I mean, Jeep has all the SUVs except for a Durango, and you can't buy everything that's a Chrysler, everything that's a Dodge, and that's true with all the brands. It's not just it's not just Stellantis or Chrysler. It's all of them. They're all so specialized, you can't be dedicated to one brand anymore.
I get what you're saying. Well, the last Chrysler SUV, I guess, was the Aspen, whatever. It was built at the Newark plant.
Yep.
I think, look, you've got so many Jeeps, and I understand that's the cash cow for Stellantis. But I think if Chrysler comes out with an SUV, I hope they come out with something that's really well priced, so people can afford it, and nice looking. Because you've got all these Jeeps. It's like they have I'm just going to joke here. Like there's 15 different Jeep models. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know how many Jeep models are there. There's so many of them, but Chrysler just doesn't have, all they have is the minivan, and they're thinking, well, maybe they called that the people mover. Well, that needs to change. But they've taken, for example, with Chrysler, they've taken the logos off of all, like on the Pacifica, on the rocker panel, it used to say Chrysler. They have that little tiny blue logo. I hope they, if you look at in the past of Chrysler, the lettering, the badging is really important. And I've heard this, and I could be wrong, but I think some of these people are they don't want to press the Chrysler name because, just as you said earlier, we don't want to be seen in a Chrysler. We'd rather be in a Mercedes or something. Well, come on, be proud about your product and make it where it's going to be designed and engineered like Chrysler did in the early days. Engineering is the key to everything. Without engineering, you're going to fail. So they have to make it where the parts are accessible and they're not complicated. You have to make it easy. So 10 years down, it's going to take a while, but 10 years down the road, you'll be able to replace parts and not have to spend a fortune, because all these parts are just so expensive and there's so many hundreds of parts. One of my dealers was telling me, now I might be wrong, but like in the Jeep, there's one part for the sensor for the air for the tires. The other Jeep has a totally different, they're all different sensors.
Yes.
For the same thing. Why can't they simplify that? It should be the same for all the cars. I mean,
like a brake rotor. Why do they have so many? I deliver for a Napa store here in Worcester, Ohio, and I cannot believe that all the shelves they have just for rotors, because they're all different sizes and everything. It's like, why can't they be just one like they were in the 70s? I mean, I could go right on the shelf. I knew what to pick up and just hand it to the technician and go.
If Chrysler were to do something like that, it would take a couple years for people to figure it out, but it would just solve so many problems. It would just solve so many problems having the same parts and have them made well. Don't go for the cheapest stuff. That's another thing they were doing. They're getting all these, all the lowest products is the way we're going to go. I understand you want to save money, but come on, you've got to go for the really good parts, and you got to make it easy for the dealers. I mean, as I said, I have some dealer friends that are like, this is just crazy what's going on, so I agree with you 100%.
Yes. Now, the thing that people don't seem to realize is to bring this manufacturing back, it's also for security.
Oh, yes.
Because what people don't realize is, find out where your TV is, what factory in the U.S. is making your TV, or any TV, tennis shoes, anything like that. What is being made in the USA? And what would happen if that country would say, regardless of the tariff war, a country could still say, we're done doing business with you. So therefore, and then we're done.
I got an example. So I wanted to buy a pallet jack for my business. And I had one years ago, and I wanted to get it rebuilt. And the guy said he can't rebuild it. And we got rid of the thing. I'm sort of bummed I did, because I'm sure it could have been fixed. So I have a local distributor I wanted an American-made pallet jack. So he brought one to my shop and said, this is American-made. So I'm looking over the whole thing. There's no American flag, no nothing on it. And I looked way up under the cavity, where the pump thing goes, way, way up in there. And I saw the words, I think it was Taiwan or China or something. I'm like, you can't even find an American-made pallet jack. And I'm going to wait until I find one. I'm hoping someone out there, an American company, will build one. Napa, any of these Snap-on tool company, I have people looking for me, because we need American-made stuff. We need to bring it back.
Yes. Now, let me tell you a story about pride, brand pride. Colombia, country of Colombia. They still use to this day the Dodge D600s that were done being built in 1998. The style D600 they show a lot of were done in 1993. They still, when they repaint those trucks, and they are gorgeous trucks, they're just like the American D600s from 74 to 77 in the U.S. When they repaint their trucks, they customize them up. They put the rectangular headlights in them and everything. They keep them spotless. But when they repaint them, they still put the Dodge letters back on the hood. And the later years, cool. They quit making them for the U.S. and Canada in 77, but they still made them in Mexico and Colombia and other countries south of our border till 98. They went with the style of the cab that went with that year, but they would still put those, and they had larger letters down in Mexico and Columbia in the later years, and they would put those big Dodge letters back on the hood. This one gentleman, this is a 2-ton truck, and his door trim panels, he had a customized interior, and he had the letters Dodge embroidered into his door trim panels.
That's cool.
Who does that up here? You see these people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars. They don't even put a Dodge nameplate on it. And it's like, well, it's just ridiculous.
One thing I will say is we make the Power Wagon. We still make the Power Wagon up here because I have one from, actually my grandmother, Bernice, they bought it in 1950 and has the metal lettering. Now they have the Power Wagon out with decals. That just drives me crazy.
Yep.
I mean, it wouldn't cost a lot of money just to put Power Wagon on it with regular size letters. Just like, well, they do it with the Grand Wagoneer. They put all those letters. And I'm hoping with Chrysler, when they do that, they come out with a logo that's a little more pronounced. Be proud of your product. Go, I'm sending this product down the road, and I want people to see it and be proud of what you're driving in. They need to get over that problem they have with promoting the brand. Because I remember when Mr. Marchioni, whom I think he was...
I thought he was a good guy.
Yeah. But the only problem is when they made that deal to build the Chrysler, what was it, the 200, the Gen with a new model?
Yes.
Is that they had a deal with the union, and I know what was going on back then. Every year the union got paid more and more and more until when that deal was over, Marchioni couldn't afford to make cars. He said, I'm not in the business to build cars. I'm in the business to make money. Well, he was making money until the deal went off for the union, and that's why he had to get rid of it because he couldn't afford to build the cars. But Mr. Marchioni, I met him. I thought he did a good job for what he had, and he wanted to promote the brand, and he was in there. But now it's just a little different. But I think they're coming around. They're seeing that, America is the market where you got to sell these products, and I'm really happy just to see. I got to be, supportive. We just got to work through it and make sure that the best comes of all this.
Yes. And for people that don't know, that Chrysler 200 was it was done in the 2016 model year. I think it was 2013. And I have to look it up. I think it was the VF body is what that was. But it was a gorgeous little car, and they just got out of the car business altogether. As far as building in the U.S., I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. I agree with you. And then they came out and they said, well, the rear seat was hard to sit in or something. No matter who the press comes in, if they don't like your product, they're gonna beat you up anyhow. But I see a lot of those around. I do see a lot of them, and people that really like those, they take care of them, just like the Dart and all those kind of things. But with the union or whoever the pricing was, they just couldn't afford to make them here. So we need to change that. We need to bring the manufacturing back here.
Oh, the kids love those PF body darts.
Mm-hmm.
Those new
ones. They
ones.
were going to come out with a Chrysler 100. Remember that?
Yep.
And different brands, but that was all mixed. But your question earlier about being able to buy something across the whole line, the brand, I do hope Chrysler comes out with an SUV because I think that would be important. It has to be different looking. It has to stand alone and not be one of the, all these other cars. It's got to set its own platform. It's got to look really cool, and people, it's got to be simple and priced right.
Well, the thing is, they were supposed to come out with, and I think it was with this current shell or platform of the minivan, the RU body. I was thinking they were supposed to come out with an SUV version of that and be a Chrysler, but I never saw it.
Yeah, well, who knows? But I know with that Stella platform, they can go electric, they can go ICE, they can go EV, anything.
Yes.
And then they can switch it out. So that's a good thing. That's really good. So any of these products they're making, if they need to go EV in some states or all electric in other states, I think California has all these rules where you have to sell all electric. But who knows, that could change. But
that's been being threatened, yeah.
I tell you one technology I think is really cool. It probably won't, it's too much money, but they had this thing where you could charge your car as you're driving, on the roads. It would be probably so expensive to do. But could you imagine if you did have an electric car and you could drive it just on the highways and you could charge as you go? I mean, that would be cool, but that's probably it's beyond people can't afford.
What I don't get is this with the electrics. And I'm not against electrics. They can be part of the marketplace, absolutely. In fact, let me go back a little bit. John McElroy of Autoline shows on a long time ago on Autoline After Hours, I will never forget this. He said, gasoline is not the answer. Electric is not the answer. Diesel's not the answer. Propane, hydrogen, natural gas, or any hybrid of the above is not the answer. And it's not that we're talking about the source of energy. The key word in what he's saying is the. Because anybody in the past who's tried to bring out something new may think this was going to be the answer. Everything else will cancel out because this will be it. And his point was, we need to use all this and use it where we need to keep the country going. You know, there's going to be room for electrics. There's going to be places you need gas. There's going to be places you need diesel. Learn to live with all that and make the best out of everything because you have all these resources to work with. Now, now I've almost forgot what I was going to say, but I'm not against electric cars, but they should be part of the marketplace, not the marketplace.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's what the government sort of did.
Yes.
And they gave these companies all this money. So, you know, it was our tax dollar money that went into all this electric stuff, which is becoming to be a problem. All that money was spent. Our debt, we have more debt. Maybe it was, if you can look back, some of it might have been good because look at all these electric products coming out. And who knows where this electric is going. But hopefully we found out soon enough that electric is not the total answer for right now.
Yes.
And I don't know. I've heard stories, well, you know, it takes all these minerals and all this stuff to make batteries. And then you have the, with the gasoline or the ice motors, you've got the pollution. I mean, there's good and bad parts about all that. I mean, what do you do with all the chopped up, all the bad batteries? What happens to all that stuff for the environment? So, you know, I just think that we have to find our way. And I know we will. It's like the American, we will find our way. But I think some of these other countries, they want to push us into electric because that's their only answer because they don't have fuel. We have a lot of fuel.
Yes.
So I don't want to succumb to, well, we got to go electric because, you know, another country wants us to. We need to do what we need to do for us right here, right now, because that's the most important thing. At least that's my opinion.
Now I remember what I was going to say. Is you were talking about how if they could stay charged, it would be great. 30 years ago, they showed off the electric company in Cleveland, the utility, showed off an all-electric Ford Ranger. And I went up and I asked them, I said, you know, in a gasoline engine, there's this little round thing that's driven by a belt off the engine. It has a shaft in the center. And it has a stator. It's called the alternator. And it keeps your battery charged from 3 to 5 years. Why aren't you putting an alternator around the shaft that goes out to all 4 wheels to consistently charge the battery while you're driving? And they were lost. They had no idea what I was talking about. It's like, what, you know, there's a shaft that goes to that wheel. Put an alternator on it. And that could be charging. They said, well, when you hit the brakes, regenerative braking helps charge the battery. Why do you have to hit the brakes? Just drive. And then that alternator could turn. You have 4 of them on there, can keep recharging the batteries. It may not.
Hey, so
yes.
I have a question for you. So when you look in the early days, they talk about brake horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not an expert on this, but I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, when they do horsepower on a motor, brake horsepower, that's without anything that takes power away from the motor, sort of like the alternator or the water pump, anything that drains power from the engine. So would those, what you're talking about, would they take power away from, just to operate those, would they take power away from the horsepower of the motor and cause the motor to use more gas or fuel or electric or whatever?
Now that I don't know. I'm sure it would take a little bit, but it would still be freewheeling.
Okay,
You
I
know
get
what I'm
it.
saying? Because it's going to go the same speed. It's not really going to slow it down that much. I mean, it doesn't slow down the power of an engine when you have it bolted on a bracket with a belt.
I understand, but anything like that would take a little power, a little power away from the motor. I don't know if that makes a difference or not. I just don't know enough about all those engineering pieces. But you're right. When you slow down, it charges the battery. How much does it charge the battery? I don't know, or
Right now, I don't
anything.
either.
So I gotta brush up on my engineering. But these are all things that these professionals study, and they know how it operates. So I guess it was back. Was it back when the first Chrysler came out? There was a guy named I think of his name now. He went on all the test trips with Chrysler, and this gentleman, like when Chrysler tested out his first car, they went up. They had this hill in New Jersey, and he went up and he said to the guy, he said, "What do you think?" And the guy said, "We got to start from scratch," because they wanted to make that engine when you go up a hill that you don't have to downshift, and they fixed it. That was one of the main things about that first car. So
Well,
I'll think I'll think of that guy's name in a minute. He was a very important part to Chrysler.
yeah, there was a couple gentlemen back then. I read David Zatz's book on the first 100 years of Chrysler, and that's a good book. And
Oh yes, I have that book.
and there was two other gentlemen, if not three, that were very dedicated to Chrysler and worked very well with your great grandfather and kept it going, the momentum going after he was gone. And I forget their names, but there was a very dedicated team, and David kept telling stories of what they would do if this was accomplished. Let's go to the next thing, and things like that is what they were looking for. Was to make
Well,
sure you can go up
the
a
early,
hill without downshifting.
well, I think that was an important. That was really important. I think that early car was so special. Even like Chrysler. I mean, some of these very expensive cars, a few of them had hydraulic brakes, but Chrysler brought those into the smaller cars, and he got that. I mean, into the lower price models. He got that from his days on the railroad business, because he knew how railroad cars are hooked up by hydraulics. That's how the braking system worked, and they were safe. And that's what propelled that. That's what that first car was so cool. I mean, it just had it, and it was just 100 years ago. Think about this: that it was at the New York Auto Show. He couldn't bring it in, so they put his car in the Commodore Hotel, where all the people were staying, and he made his deal for his car in the back of the car during the show. The bankers were sitting in there. He had their full attention. Can you imagine? He's sitting there. He's so excited about his new car, and the bankers are in there, and he sold them on his product right in his car. I mean, the guy was a genius.
Yes.
I mean, he was an engineer from the prairies of Kansas, and he knew how to sell. And you have to have engineering, you have to sell, and he had a track record. So it's really cool. We need that back today.
Yes, we do. Absolutely. We got to bring the passion back. So,
Passion. That's what it is, the passion.
yes. Now, what do you know about Chrysler Marine? Anything?
Well, I do know that Chrysler Marine, I think, started with the West Bend. I'm thinking now, the West Bend outboard company back in the late 50s. I'm sure, and Chrysler was big. Okay, that's another thing in World War II. They were big in Marine. They had all their engines powered these little vehicles that would push ships around, and they were big into Marine in World War II. So they probably wanted, and they were very big into Marine, for boats, the early Chris Crafts and all that. They all used Chrysler motors. Generally, that was the motor of the time. So they wanted to expand. I don't know. It's just like you said before. They got into all these different things, good or bad, but they got into the marine business, and they got into the outboard business, and then they got into the boat business, and then they got into the sailboats and all these things. And I've got all the catalogs. So I think, they made some decent motors. I have a pair of these racing engines that they made. They have like exhaust pipes on them. They're really cool. But and then I guess when the marine business went out, when Lee Iacocca wanted to sell it all, so that was in the early '80s.
Okay.
They got out of the marine business. I do know that, but I got all their catalogs, and that's a whole discussion in itself. The marine business. I mean, it was a big part of Chrysler.
Yeah, I remember I lived up in Port Clinton, Ohio, which is right on Lake Erie between Toledo and Cleveland. And one of the companies that used a lot of Chrysler engines was Gray Marine.
Okay.
And they used Chrysler engines as their basis engines for their drive systems. So as far as the inboards go, they used the flathead 6, they had slant 6s, they had V8s. So Gray was huge with that.
I want to say one thing. I remember the name of that guy. His name is Toby or Tobe Couture, Coture, and he was one of the main guys that helped Chrysler with these early designs, because I think his son, when I was up at Chrysler, I don't know, 20 something years ago, maybe longer than that, when they were really big into history, his son was working there. So it's either Tobe or Toby Couture was one of the main guys. And he told Chrysler, don't build this car. We got to start from scratch. And Chrysler trusted him. So I just thought of that name. But anyhow, we were talking about the Marine Division and Gray Motor. So what were you saying about Gray Motor Company?
They were a company just like Mercruiser and the others, but back in the 60s, they had used a lot of Chrysler engines to power their drive lines for that go into boats. Mm-hmm. Gray Marine was huge on Chrysler. I remembered that. So that's pretty much all the more I remember that. I remember seeing the Chrysler outboards at different boat stores and stuff like that through the years. And so I just thought I'd bring it up to see what you knew about the Marine, and also to let the folks listening know that it's part of the Chrysler diversity. They were huge out there with all kinds of stuff.
They built a whole bunch of sailboats, and you could get big boats. They built like 25 to 35 foot dual engine, inboard, outboard, all kinds of stuff, and they had all the parts, and they were big into it. But like anything else, you spread yourself too thin, and they need to concentrate on cars.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So maybe they thought they could diversify over all these other lines. And just like air conditioners, the Chrysler Air Temp Company, I mean, that was another one that I think that was sold in the 70s.
That's right. They did make home air conditioners. Yes.
Oh, yes. Lots of that stuff. I got a whole bunch of those brochures. So yeah, Chrysler was involved in a lot of stuff. So,
is there anything else you want to bring up? I'm sort of running out of things myself.
That's okay.
What kind of cars do you have? What for vehicles do you have? Because I've heard it before, but maybe the other listeners haven't. It's a very good, diverse collection.
Well, first of all, before I get into the cars, I'm a big collector of Chrysler, the signage. I've been collecting a lot of signs for years. Some of that stuff's hard to get. I just bought a bunch of. They used to have these silk banners they'd hang in the showroom. I got a whole bunch of those I got to hang. I mean, they're really nice. They have different logos from the 30s and the 40s. I think the signs are really important. A lot of neon. Neon was big in that era. But going back to the cars, so I have I have a 1950 Dodge Power Wagon that my grandmother Bernice and her husband Ed bought for their farm. I have a Dodge Doodlebug, which had a Chrysler motor, and it was made by Worthington Motor Company, and they would use that for golf courses to pull the gang mowers, or they would use it to pull luggage at airports. Chrysler was big into that stuff in that era. Then I have a 1967 Dodge, I think it's a D200 step van. My grandparents, they had a egg business, so they would deliver eggs with that, and I have it all restored. I'm taking that up to Carlisle.
Parcel delivery chassis were P's, letter P as in Paul.
Oh, they were? Okay. Well, yes, you're right about that. I have the brochure. But I think yes.
And I emailed you a picture of a Boyertown, if you remember that.
Yeah, mine is a Boyertown.
Yep, I remember you said that, and I got two different pictures of Boyertown vans. I should have emailed you the picture of the other one from a brochure collection I have.
Well, it's interesting you said that because I bought a whole bunch of, that's another thing, I have a ton of literature, but I bought a whole bunch of Dodge truck stuff, and there's like 15 different step vans they made in that era, all different. Every year they had different ones, the different models, the job rated ones. I mean, it's pretty cool. But anyhow, so I have that. Then, recently I bought, Chrysler made a car over in France called the Simca.
Yes.
So there's a guy in this country who is the Simca man. And I bought 3 Simcas from him like about 6 months ago, and they all need work, but one of them was a racing model. So I'm working on those. Then I have my early car. I have a 1926 Chrysler, or it's an Imperial E80, which is, it's all original. It's got,
wow.
It's just so cool. Leather seat, everything, the original paint. I mean, the paint's chipping off of some places, but I like stuff like that. Then let's see. I have a 1940 Dodge cab over that I have the air raid siren put on. I had a guy fix that for me. And then on my newer cars, I have a 19. Actually, I have a 2014 Dodge. It's a Mopar 14. Excuse me.
Okay.
It's called a Mopar 14, and they only made 100 of them. And it was really interesting because before I knew this attorney up there, and I called him and I said, I heard this car's coming up. Can you help me get this? And he said, sure. He called me back 2 hours later, said, if you don't order it today, this is going to be sold out. So I ordered it, and I wrote him back and I said, look, I'd like either number 1 or number 14. I didn't want to be, say, hey, I got to have number 1. I said, I'll take number 14. Well, anyhow, no one told me when it came into the dealer, I got number 1. I'm bragging a little bit. It's really cool.
Yes.
They only made 100 of those. Then I have a 2018 Chrysler 300 all-wheel drive, which is green. It's the green color that they only made for 1 year, and it's copied off of I can't remember the code number, but in the 70s, they used to use that green on a lot of their station wagons. It's just a really cool, it's an army green, not army, but it's just sort of a neat green. Then I have a 2023 last call Mopar 23 Challenger, and all these have the 5-speed or the 6-speed. I love the gears. I love manual. And then one of the coolest cars I have is a 2023 Chrysler 300C, and I got the last one off the assembly line. So, some people at Chrysler signed it for me, so that's really cool. Well, I know I have something. I have a 1962 Dodge M37, which was a Vietnam era truck, which is really cool.
Yes, that's a very cool collection you got there.
Yeah, and I don't need, it's a lot of work. You got all those batteries and wheel cylinders, and you got to run them all the time. So, I don't know, people like Jay Leno, I don't know how, he hires people to do all that for him.
I'm sure he does.
I do most of this stuff myself, and it's a lot of work. So
now the Mopar 14, what was that based off of?
It's a Challenger.
Challenger, okay, because they did different models for the Mopar at the time, and I just wasn't sure what the 14 model year was. So it was a Challenger.
It has a shaker hood on it. It's really cool.
Yeah, and whenever you needed parts for that, what you had to do was, like if they were under warranty, we had one come in under warranty. It was a Charger, needed the blue stripe. And yes, you cannot order just the blue stripe. What you order, because it's Mopar, it's accessories, so you had to order the accessory pack just to get the stripe. But you get all the stuff that they put on at the factory in that box.
What stripe are you talking about now for the Mopar 14?
Yes.
Well, you could get a couple stripes, but the one I got was the rocker panel stripe. It's big Mopar blue, and it says Mopar on it. It's the coolest one of all of them, as far as I'm concerned. You could get a stripe going over the top, but the Mopar on the rocker panel, I've only seen one in white out of 100. I mean, I don't know how many people got the rocker panel stripe, but I do have one other car. I recently got a 1969 Dodge Daytona Charger, or Challenger, which is really, really cool. Oh, it's a Charger, excuse me.
Yes.
Yeah, and they only made 500 of those. So boy, I get a lot of waves. And mine's all original. It's a livery car. It's got the decals all over it and Spirit of 76. And on the wing, it says USA. I mean, can't get anything more American made than that. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the Daytonas and Superbirds were their own cars, and you really couldn't do much with them as far as customizing. Of course, you didn't need to. They were a customized car to begin with. The only bad thing about those cars was they're sort of boring when you watch them at a drag strip because they got so much weight to them. But when you go like at Michigan, the perfect place to go is Michigan International Speedway. If you ever, because I drove on that track, I worked at a Buick Pontiac GMC dealer, and they asked if I wanted to go to the Michigan race, the June race, because they did a promotion with Pontiac. And so you could buy these cars at a discount rate, but they were used to go around the track as part of a display, pre-race display. So that means we got to drive on the track. And
there you go.
And when I drove a Michigan International Speedway on a video game, that is a track where it has very few cautions because it is so perfectly shaped. And that's why I said Michigan would be the greatest place for the Daytona, because you're not going to go as fast as you did when they were at Daytona or Talladega, but you have the high banking, and that'd be the greatest place to just let your Daytona or Superbird fly.
But the tires on there, those old ply tires, just they're narrow. Back then they didn't have the wider tires. I don't know. I'm not really big into like super duper racing. I just like to drive them. I like manuals too. Now my Daytona is an automatic, but that's okay. It's an older car, but I like the manual.
Yes,
that's just me.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was able to, when I bought my 71 Demon 340 in 1979, I needed tires, and they were just discontinuing the Goodyear custom wide tread poly glasses.
Mm-hmm.
And you drive down the road, if there's a rut in the road, it would follow it. So you had to fight the wheel all the time. The radial tires don't do that. So
I understand. Well, yeah, I remember I had a Charger. It was what was it, 1978 Charger that I had, and I wanted to put wider tires on it, and they said you can't do it because they were made for that specific width. And I knew back then that a wider tire would give you more traction on the road, but they didn't design them that way. So.
Right.
And one thing I'll say back in that era, I remember how a lot of the foreign companies they put better stereos in the cars. Okay, they had the blinker on the right by the steering wheel, whereas we were still putting the blinker on the floor. I mean, we just were slow. Our whole manufacturing base was really slow to pick up on all that stuff. But here we are, and just got to keep pushing the Chrysler brand, and I'm just going to keep doing what I do. I've been up to Chrysler so many times, and I've just pushed for them doing positive things, and I just want to keep doing that because someone has to do it, and I know people care, but I want to just keep pushing the envelope, pushing it to save the brand because it's so important in this country. You can't let that go away.
No, I mean, in a way, we got to thank Hollywood, because everybody says Chevrolet, the heartbeat of America, baseball hot dog, and all this. But look at the movies and TV shows that were out there. The General Lee, and even other brands that they didn't even use Chevrolets. The Fall Guy had a GMC, A-Team made GMC. The Fast and Furious movies had the Dodges and the Ram pickups.
But one of the main movies that really was Chrysler oriented was called A Mad, 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 Mad World.
Oh, yes.
Chrysler. Every single car in the movie was a Chrysler. I was like, that is a classic.
I'm surprised.
They're all classic.
When they were doing those chase scenes towards the end, just to see those 59 Plymouths, and the quarter panel was about ready to rub the ground when they took those sharp turns at those intersections. Remember that? It's like the wheel got sucked up clear underneath the car.
They had an M37 in there, a tow truck. I remember that.
Yep.
I mean, the whole, and I think they had a 62 Imperial in there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Anyhow, And there's a new movie I saw recently. It was with oh gosh, have you ever noticed in some of these movies where they use older cars, and I can't think of the name, just like with the Toby Cochero, remember, but there's a movie I saw recently, and it was a gangster movie. Oh, what was it? Uh, just came out. It was brand new. It just came out a couple months ago, and a lot of it was filmed in New York, and all the cars in the New York City scenes were all like Chrysler products. Like they had a DeSoto, and the film guy would go, you could see it was a DeSoto. They had Plymouths, but then when they went out to all the gangsters, whatever, went up, they all met up in New England. They were all like Buicks and Cadillacs. But the scenes in New York City, I mean, I noticed that in these early movies. I see what kind of cars are they using.
Oh yeah, I do too.
And a lot of these film producers, if they know their stuff, they'll use the right cars because Chrysler was big back then.
Yes.
And another thing is, look, I know you were talking about how Chrysler has, the naysayers that the cars break down. They have, especially with the 300 series and all those models with Virgil Exner and all that. I mean, come on, some of the designs are like masterpieces.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the dash. Look at that. Their artwork to the hilt. So Chrysler was big into that. They had a lot of really cool things. The other guys did too. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
Ford and GM too, but Chrysler had some really, really awesome, unique designs. So just got to keep pushing that envelope.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I remember. Now the reason why I kept pushing the step vans is Worcester, Ohio, was home to the Bookmobile.
Oh yeah, okay.
The traveling library at the Gerstenslager Company. And so I loved looking at the strip chassis before they went in to have their bodies put on. And they had flat face cowls, they had strip chassis, they had cabin chassis. So it was really neat to look at that stuff. And I worked at the Dodge dealer, so the dealership, wherever they got the bid from, orders it. It gets shipped to our place. We do some prep. There's the wooden boxes that had the headlights and the wiring harness and the gauges in them and stuff. And I always thought that was sort of cool. So, and to watch the evolution of the strip chassis with how they use the instruments and stuff out of the pickup trucks or whatever. And it was sort of neat to do that. And a little story about that is the factory's called Artiflex, and they actually still do stamping for metal for Stellantis. But the Gerstenslager Company, Mrs. Gerstenslager, actually when her husband was alive, they drove Imperials from what was back then Harry Bernstein, then Ned Adams, or Jim Griffith, and then Ned Adams. And when he passed away, and she was getting up there in the years, she would still wear her mink stoles. She'd have her hair up high and wear a nice fancy hat. But she was true Mopar all the way. Before, in her older years, she drove, and it was always immaculate, an 88 Reliant wagon.
Oh, wow.
She was that dedicated to Chrysler products because the dealership took care of her and stuff, but she would drive, and very proudly, that 88 Reliant wagon. And after she was done with the Imperials, because they were just too big for her. But like I said, that thing was spotless. I would have loved to have had that car. But that was a true dedication of Chrysler there. And you remember those stories from the neighborhoods through the years, especially if you live in Worcester's, like back then was like about 18,000 people. It's like 25,000 now. So, but yeah, I remember that. So, well, I'll tell you, but those are some of the things I always liked. Another side story was the Gerstenslager Company. In the early 60s, they had a contract for mail trucks, little slant six P100 mail trucks. And there was like chassis all over the place. I remember that. I was in elementary school and they had that and they brought them out. There was an episode of Hawaii Five-0. They were out in the middle of the country and there was a Gerstenslager mail truck. And they always had stamped panel underneath the rear access door, Gerstenslager. Well, they did a camera shot of that. Gerstenslager Company, Worcester, Ohio. It's like, wow, all right, they did it. So...
Oh, I love it. I love that story. There's so many cool stories out there. We could continue and just keep talking about it,
yes.
Because I'm going to start. I have a vast collection of items, and I'm going to come out. I have a little website. It's like a museum website that I already have about 1,200 pictures on it, and I'm trying to put this together where people can come in and access all kinds of stuff, but it's going to be massive. So I'm trying to. It might be a little while before I get it online, but I'm working on that now. So
please let me know so I can let the folks know out there and the listeners, what the website will be.
I will. No problem. I'll make sure, but one day at a time. You know how it goes.
Absolutely, I do. Absolutely, I do. Well, Frank, it was a great time talking to you, sir. I really appreciate this.
Well, I appreciate the time. I mean, I love talking cars, especially Chrysler. I can't stop.
Same
we could
here.
Talk forever.
Yep.
So let's continue this. I'm looking forward to continuing the story, and we'll see what the next couple months or a year, takes with Chrysler, where they're going, because I'm positive about this. I think we've got some good things coming. Remember, one thing I'm going to leave this interview with is that when things get tough for Chrysler comes out with winning items and products.
Yes.
And they're under the gun right now. And they've done it in the past, and I know they'll do it again. They're going to come out with successful products. Let's stay positive, and let's, all support what they're doing.
Yes. Kuniskis is back. I've heard some encouraging things from John Elkann, the chairman of the board at Stellantis. He got us reinstated in certain things, like over in Europe, that Tavares took out, and he's bringing them back, and he's got some reality in him. I'm encouraged with that.
I know he does. I know he's a realist. So let's just stay positive.
Yes, absolutely.
They planted, the New York Auto Show is a good start. So I think they're going to be at Carlisle. We're going to have a lot of folks there. So let's just, keep it going.
I think I read Robert S. Miller reported that Christine Fuel will be at Carlisle.
That's what she said, but yes, they're planning on it. That's all I know.
I hope John McAleer and Tim Kuniskis show up too.
Well, you never know. A lot of those guys I hope Tim Kuniskis is there, and Mr. Manley too. I'd love to see him.
Yes, he did a great job when he was with Jeep. Yes, but there's one thing I want to say about the Power Wagon, and that is these people are wanting to put a diesel in it, and it's like, no. If you want a diesel, you get a Rebel, because the Power Wagon is supposed to be the ultimate in off-roading, and you don't need a 5,000-pound engine in the front sinking your front end. That's why they never put a diesel in a Power Wagon, ladies and gentlemen, in this current generation Power Wagon. So just want to let that out too. So,
okay.
Frank, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate the time, and you do a great job. But let's just keep the momentum going and keep the story out there, Scott.
I will do my best, sir. All right.
Take care of yourself and have a great day, okay?
You too, Frank. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. I had a really good time interviewing Frank Rhodes Jr. for the WaltPar Podcast, and it was a great time and a great interview, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. I would like to make a correction to an answer I made to one of his questions. When he said if there's any group of car enthusiasts who show up in greater numbers, it's the Mopar community. And while I still believe we are a fractured community, Frank was correct. We do show up in great numbers. I just wish more different kinds of Mopars would show up in great numbers. I know drag races really are out if you have a 1932 or whatever it is, if you have an airflow or anything like that. But he is correct. I just wish we could see more people out there having more fun with their Mopars and everything else. So let's just hope we can keep going with that. And but it was great having him on, and I appreciate Frank's time very much. We did that on the Saturday morning of Easter weekend, and we got that done. But just thank you so much, and hope you enjoyed it. Now, I would like to announce the ALL Mopar show calendar that Phil Lamarand of the Tri-State Mopar Club of Cincinnati, Ohio, and I put together. and heard at the end of all WaltPar podcasts will now be published as well in the bi-monthly WPC News, which is the news publication of the Walter P. Chrysler Club. To join, please go to chryslerclub.org for more information, and please tell them you heard this on the WaltPar Podcast. Now, thank you so much for joining me for episode number 17. Before we go to the calendar, thank you for joining me today to keep up with the latest news on the Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, and Ram brands worldwide and pictures of I see at the events I attend. Go to my social media, search WaltPar Podcast. And please tell your fellow Mopar fans, lovers, and enthusiasts everywhere about the WaltPar Podcast. Please subscribe wherever you listen and give me a top rating if you feel I did a good enough job. I would appreciate it very much. Now, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or suggestions, or to let me know of an all Mopar event, you can email me again at waltparpodcast@aol.com. Direct message me on any of my social media, or you can snail mail me at P.O. Box 455, Apple Creek, that's 2 words, Apple Creek, Ohio, 44606. Before we start going through the event calendar, please, whenever you go to a car show or a cruise in, find a Mopar that is totally different than yours and say hello to them and find out about their car, and hopefully they'll ask the same of you. I want to thank you so much for listening, and I hope you join me here next time for the next episode of the WaltPar Podcast. And as always, what Mike Bonadonna of the Citrus County, Florida Mopar Club says, keep those highways beautiful. Drive your Mopars, uniting all generations and types of Mopar fans, lovers, and enthusiasts everywhere, from Walter P. Chrysler to today's Mopar and beyond. This has been the WaltPar Podcast. Take care, everyone. The WaltPar Podcast is a production of Otto Catawba, LLC. Now let's finish up episode 17 with the event calendar. Okay, first up in the great state of Alabama, June 14th, 2025, the Coleman, Cullman Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram presents Mopars by the Lake at Sportsman Lake Park in Coleman, Alabama, the hosting club, Pentastar South. For further information, 256-734-1064. Ask for Robert or Brenda, 256-590-2949. Alberta, Canada. Western Canada's largest Mopar show, Western Mopar Madness at the RAD Torque Raceway in Leduc County, Alberta, Canada. Hosting club, Edmund Mopar Association. If you want to look up for more information there, EMAWMM.com. Arkansas, May 30th and 31st. It's the 10th annual Mopar Mania to be held in a to-be-determined location Friday night. Car show to be held at the Jacksonville Community Center in Jacksonville, Arkansas. MoparMania.net or net for more information. June 21st, it's the Turpentine Creek Mopar Classic at Turpentine Creek Wildlife Refuge at Eureka Springs, Arkansas. TCMoparClassic.com for more information. Also in British Columbia, it's the 9th on May 25th, the 9th, that's in Canada, British Columbia, Canada. The 9th annual West Coast Mopar Car Shows at Coombs Fairgrounds in Coombs at COOMBS, British Columbia. Hosting club is West Coast Mopars. Go to westcoastmopars@gmail.com to obtain more information. Great state of California, July 25th, 33rd Annual Mopar Rally Car Corral and Swap Meet at De Anza College in Cupertino, California, moparvalley.org. September 27th, the 33rd Annual Fall Finale at Sierra Bicentennial Park, Clovis, California. Hosting club is the San Joaquin Valley Mopars. That's SANJOAQUIN ValleyMopars.com for more information. Mopar in the Day Park. Mopar Day in the Park at Hagen Community Park in Rancho Cordova, California. Hosting club is Capital City Mopars. Great state of Connecticut, September 21st, the 17th Annual Innovators Show and Shine All Mopar Show. Artioli Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Enfield, that's Enfield, Connecticut. Hosting club is Mopars in Motion. Call 860-416-1228. Ask for Ralph Barbagello. In Florida, November 1st and 2nd is Mopars with Big Daddy at the Garlits Drag Racing Museum, garlits.com, or 352-245-8661. In the great state of Illinois, June 1st, Mopar Madness 2025 at the Kazi Corner Hot Dogs and Beef and Catering in Downers Grove, Illinois. Hosting club Chicagoland Mopar. Contact Steve Burtock at hockey4sb@gmail.com or 331-645-7500, or Ron Jones at sprbrdron@yahoo.com, or 630-546-3845. Chicagoland Mopar for more information. June 1st to the 6th, it's the 60th Annual Airflow Club of America National Meet to be held at the Northfield Inn, Springfield, Illinois. Airflow Club for .com for more information. Now, the rest of these, you can go to Chicagoland Mopar, the next two events here. Mopar's at the park from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Fox Lake Veterans Memorial Park in Fox Lake, Illinois. You can go Bruce at GOTT4528 at Comcast.net or 630-274-1442. ChicagolandMopar.com. The big day in Belvedere, Illinois is happening July 19th and 20th. Midwest Charger Meet is on the 19th. On the 20th, it's the Modern Mopar Muscle Meet and the Belvedere Mopar all happening from 8 a.m. until 3 p.m. at the Boone County Fairgrounds in Belvedere, Illinois. Again, the hosting club is Chicagoland Mopar Connection. For this, contact Scott at sssp@sbcglobal.net or 708-254-0237. And for the other events, and that's for the Charger Show, the other events, contact Roger, cmcrvc@comcast.net or 815-262-6311. And there's the 618 Mopar Meet at the Lake in North Markham Beach, Benton, Illinois. The hosting club, 618 Mopar Club. In Indiana, October 11th, it's the 5th Annual Speeds Mopar Day at Speeds New Hope, Indiana Dragway in Spencer, Indiana. Make sure you phone 317-410-4705 or Speeds New Hope, Indiana Dragway at gmail.com for more information. June 7th in the great state of Iowa, it's the Mopar Max 2025 Special Mopar Race at Cedar Falls Motorsports Park in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Next up in August, I'm doing this so fast I got to read more carefully. August 3rd, 2025, Mopar Day at Humboldt County Dragway in Humboldt, Iowa. Hosting club is the North Iowa Mopars. August 24th, Mopars on the Mississippi, the 2025 car show and swap meet at the Dubuque County Fairgrounds in Dubuque, Iowa. Hosting club is, again, the Chicagoland Mopar Connection. Contact Rick at rickathy1953 at gmail.com. That's for the show information at 815-930-1776. For swap meet information, contact Ron Barton at 563-588-4585 or ChicagolandMopar.com in the great state of Kansas. June 21st is the 40th Annual Mopar Meet at Sedgwick County Park in Wichita, Kansas. Hosting club, Wichita Area Mopars. Search them on Facebook for more information. In the great state of Kentucky, September 12th through the 14th, the Holly Mo Party at Beach Bend Raceway Park, Bowling Green, Kentucky. Moparty.com for more information. October 3rd through the 5th, the Mopar Drag Fest at London Drag Fest at London Dragway, London, Kentucky. Contact Craig Boone, 606-231-3446, or Bob Rogers at 859-338-6850. The great state of Maryland, October 18th, 2025, the Mopar Eastern Classic and King of Street Heads Up Mopar Racing, Maryland International Raceway in Mechanicsville, Maryland. And that's also part of the Modern Street Hemi Shootout Weekend. GoRaceMIR.com for more information. The great state of Michigan, September 20th. the 13th annual Michigan Mopar Muscle Club All Mopar Car Show and Swap Meet, which will be held at the Hub Stadium in Auburn Hills, Michigan. Hosting club is Michigan Mopar Muscle Car Club. Go to their website, michiganmoparmuscle.com, or email for more information at showinfo@michiganmoparmuscle.com. In the great state of Minnesota, this is under a new location this year, May 30th through June 1st. May 30th through June 1st. Midwest Mopars in the Park Car Show and Swap Meet. This year will be held at the Dakota County Fairgrounds in Farmington, Minnesota. The hosting club is the Midwest Mopars. Go to midwestmopars.middletwin.com for more information. In the great state of Mississippi, October 9th, it's Mopars in the Bay at Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. Hosting club, Big Easy Mopar Association. Phone 504-512-0367 for more information. In the great state of Missouri, now this is actually in Madison, Illinois, but it's in the St. Louis area. It's the St. Louis Mopar Blast at Worldwide Technology Raceway in Madison, Illinois, hosted by Mopar Blast Incorporated, a registered 501c3 nonprofit organization. You can go to stlouismoparblast.com for more information. The great state of Nebraska, July 13th, the 10th annual Crazy Days Mopar Show and Shine at Plum Crazy Restorations in Fremont, Nebraska. On July 20th, it's the 3rd annual H&H Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram All Mopar Show in Papillon, Nebraska. Go to their Facebook and Instagram pages for more information, or hhjeepdodgeram.com. September 6th in Nebraska, the 19th annual Mopar Mega Meet at Papillon La Vista South High School Stadium. And again, Papillon, Nebraska. Contact Dan 402-740-1054 or highimpactperformance.org. There will be a rain date of October 4th. The great state of New Jersey, it's the annual California's Mopar Show to be held June 7th with a rain date of June 8th to benefit the California Veterans Memorial at Califon Island Park in Califon, New Jersey. CalifornCarshow.org for more information. In the great state of New Mexico, June 14th, the 28th annual Mopar Muscle Club of New Mexico Moparfest at Haynes Park in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. Go to nmmoparfest@yahoo.com for more information, or go to moparclub.com. The great state of New York, June 8th, 15th annual Western New York Mopars Mopar Day All Mopar Gathering and Drag Racing at Lancaster Motorplex in Lancaster, New York. Hosting club is the Western New York Mopars, and go to their Facebook page for more information. August 13th through the 17th is the annual Chrysler 300 Club International Fall Meet, hosted by Jamie Hyde, Ron Klinsar, and Bob Merritt, and it will be held in the Buffalo, New York area at Transit Town Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Williamsville, New York. Chrysler300club.com for more information. Mopars at the Valley Car Show and Swap Meet at Lebanon Valley Dragway will be held September 14th in East Chatham, New York. Hosting club Capital Area Mopars, or also go to dragway.com for more information. In Nova Scotia, the Dartmouth Chrysler Dodge Jeep Mopar Show in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. That's the 17th of August. The rain date is the 24th. Contact Gary at 902-449-4321. Hosting club Mopar Maritime. November 15th in the great state of North Carolina, it's the Fall Mopars at the Rock at Rockingham Dragway. Go to rockinghamdragway.com for more information. Now, the state with the most Mopar events, and we've already had 2 of them already, plus one was a rainout, which will be rescheduled. June 7th, and this is it right here. What was supposed to be held May 3rd is now June 7th this year. It's the rain date for the Mopar Dust-Off to be held at Quaker Steak and Lube in Polaris in Columbus, Ohio. Hosting club All Modern Mopars of Ohio. Go to look up ALL Car Club on Facebook for more information. Also on June 7th in St. Mary's, Ohio, it's the 26th annual St. Mary's Mopar Or No Car Cruise-In at their dealership. Registration begins at 9 a.m. Cruise-in starts at 2 p.m. Contact Brian Engel, 419-305-6552. An event I'm going to make sure I'm going to be going to in a few weeks. It's the Dodge Brothers Club Meet in Berlin, Ohio. That's for Dodges from 1914 through 1928. Contact Teresa Jensen. And I lost her phone number. Man, but look up Teresa Jensen and she'll be able to help you out. June 8th, my fault on that. My apologies. The 17th annual Mopars at Junction Auto Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Chardon, Ohio. That's Chardon. Contact Mike during business hours at 440-286-6161 or 440-946-5540. There will be a rain date on that, which would be June 16th. June 21st, the All Mopar Show at Plaza Inn Restaurant in Main Street, Mount Victory, Ohio. Contact Jerry at 614-507-0537 or Denny at 419-346-3813 for more information. June 25th through the 29th, and I will be there for that. I'm looking forward to it. The National Convention, DeSoto Convention. The host hotel will be the Doubletree Inn on West Market Street in Akron, desoto.org for more information. August 1st through the 3rd, it's Mopars at Dragway 42. With the annual 34th Annual Mid-Ohio Mopar Show will be part of that event. And the show itself will be held on August 5th August 2nd with a rain date of August 3rd. And you can check that out. They have their own Facebook page for that, Dragway42 as well as .com, as well as go to the Mid-Ohio Mopar's Facebook page. August 8th through the 10th, it's the 43rd Annual Nationals at National Trail Raceway in Kirkersville, Ohio, east of Columbus. Moparnats.org for more information. September 21st, 2025, it's the annual Classic Chrysler Car Club of America Toledo Car Show at York Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram on the Central Avenue Strip in Toledo. Contact Dan Russell, 419-466-3863. September 18th through the 21st is the 3rd Annual Ken Galley Mopar Mania, presented by Edelbrock Performance, formerly the World of Mopar, Summit Motorsports Park in Norwalk, Ohio, summitmotorsportspark.com. The great state of Indiana. The date has been changed for this year's Southern Plains Mopar Fest, hosted by the city of Bristow, Oklahoma, and the Bristow, Oklahoma Historical Society. The new date this year was from May. It will be held this year, October 3rd and 4th. Go to southernplainsmoparfest.com for more information. November 1st, it's the 19th Annual Mopars at the Park Car Show Drag Racing Swap Meet, Tulsa Raceway Park in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You can look up phone number 918-645-9078 or email LexiF, L-E-X-I-E-F, at valornet.com or facebook.com/LexiFowl. That's LEXIEFOWLE. In Ontario, Canada, June 14th, it's Mopar Day at St. Thomas Dragway in St. Thomas, Ontario. Contact Jarrett Spriet at JSPRIET at St. Thomas or stthomasdragway.ca. You can also phone 519-775-0001 for more information. Hosting club, the Western Ontario Mopar Owners. July 26th is the 3rd Annual Motor City Mopar Show, being held at Motor City Chrysler in Windsor, Ontario. The hosting club is the Windsor Area Mopar Muscle Club. Go to their Facebook page for more details under events. The big one I talked about at the beginning of the podcast, Moparfest, Canada's largest all-Mopar car show, will be held in New Hamburg, Ontario, Canada. Moparfest.com for more information. The great state of Oregon. August 3rd, the 40th Annual Woodburn Dragstrip Mopar Nationals at Woodburn Dragstrip, Woodburn, Oregon. You can go to woodburndragstrip.com for more information or call 541-746-4620. In the great state of Pennsylvania, May 23rd through the 26th at the National Hemi Owners Club Spring Meet in Butler, Pennsylvania. That's all the information I have for it. June 1st, it's the 38th annual Lake Erie Tri-State Mopar Club All Mopar Car Show and Swap Meet. Will be held at the Albion County Fairgrounds, Albion, Pennsylvania. Hosting club is the Lake Erie Tri-State Mopar Club. Look up LETS Mopar Club on Facebook, or you can email them at letsmoparclub@yahoo.com. June 20th through the 24th. It's the third annual Shelby Dodge Auto Club meet and drag racing at Maple Grove Dragway. Car show still to be determined. Go to sdac.org. Hosting club is the Shelby Dodge Automobile Club. June 22nd, the All Mopar Show hosted by the Lansdale Auto Group and Miss Mopar. It will be at the Lansdale Auto Group in Montgomeryville, Pennsylvania. Go to allmoparshow.com. On July 18th through the 13th. It's the big weekend, folks. This is to celebrate Chrysler's 100-year anniversary. Quite a few events are going on. A lot of great things to see, like you heard earlier. Frank Rhodes, the great-grandson of Walter P. Chrysler, who we just had the interview with. He will be there with his artifacts. There will be big tanks that Chrysler used to make and everything else. The Chrysler Carlisle Nationals, it will all be a part of that, and at the Carlisle Fairgrounds in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. CarlisleEvents.com, some of the things that are going on. The Plymouth Owners Club National Meet will be part of the 100-year anniversary at Carlisle. PlymouthOwners.club, that's PlymouthOwners.club. And also the 10th through the 13th, it is the Walter P. Chrysler National Meet, part of the 100-year anniversary at Carlisle. Flyer is okay, but yeah, go to WPC or ChryslerClub.org or ORG for more information. August 29th through September 1st, it's the Northeast Hemi Owners Club Fall Meet, location to be determined. In the great state of South Carolina, June 11th through the 14th, it's the American Motors Owners Association National Convention in Greenville, South Carolina. Open to all Nash, Hudson, Rambler, AMC, and any Jeep and Renault vehicles that were built and sold by American Motors. See their flyer on the social media pages. The hosting club is the American Motors Owner Association and the Carolina AMC Club. October 22nd through the 25th. It's Mopar Fever at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Go to 8f03 mopars.org. or go to their Facebook page for more information. June 13th through the 16th, it's Meet in the Mountains. That's all I have for that information for now. Coming up next on June 28th, it's the 36th Annual Fun in the Sun Show and Swap Meet at Chilhowie Park Fairgrounds in Knoxville, Tennessee. Swap meet information and other information, contact Judy Holman at 865-691-6002 or Anthony Jeffers at 865-275-446. You can also email for more information, etmcarclub@gmail.com, or you can go to easterntennesseemopars.com. East Tennessee, it's East 10. Yeah, EastTennesseeMopars.com. Hosting club, East Tennessee Mopars. And that's coming up in the great state of Tennessee. Also in Tennessee, the 36th Annual Music City Mopar Club Show will be held September 27th at the Wilson County Fairgrounds in Lebanon, Tennessee. Hosting club is the Music City Mopar Club, 615-972-1056. MusicCityMoparClub.com for more information. The great state of Texas, October 9th through the 11th. The 15th Annual Lone Star Mopar Fest will be held in Houston, Texas. The hosting club will be the Space City LX Club. It would be lsmfwknd.com for more information. In Victoria, Australia, June 7th and 8th, it's the second largest Mopar gathering in the Southern Hemisphere. It's the 18th Annual Mid-State Mopars 2025 at Bendigo Town Hall in Bendigo, Victoria, Australia. There's hosting clubs of Central Victoria and Chrysler Club and Mid-State Mopars Bendigo. In the great state of Virginia, August 30th. August 30th, it's Mopars in the Valley at the Salem Civic Center, and that's in the Roanoke, Virginia area. Hosted by David Simmons and the Roanoke Valley Mopar Club. Search Roanoke Valley, that's Roanoke, Valley Mopar Club on Facebook. The great state of Washington, July 24th through the 27th. It's the Walter P. Chrysler Club Northwest Regional Meet, which will be held in Chehalis, Washington. Go to their Facebook page for more information. Also on July 27th, it's the 20th Annual Mopar Magic All Mopar Car Show and Shine at Peninsula High School, Gig Harbor, Washington. AllAroundMopars.com for more information. The great state of Wisconsin, June 7th, it's the Mopar Car Show held at Bryden Motors Jeep Ram Dodge Chrysler in Beloit, Wisconsin. Hosting club will be the Wisconsin Mopar Enthusiast Club. Go to facebook.com/Wisconsin Mopar under the events tab for more information, or go to wisconsinmoparenthusiast.com. June 8th, the 44th Annual Mopar Spring Fling will be at Kilpatrick Engine and Transmission Incorporated. Hosting club will be the Wisconsin Mopar Muscle Club. Go to WMMCMopar@gmail.com or search Wisconsin Mopars on Facebook or WMMC.net. August 15th, it's the Summer Car Show at City Dodge in Brookfield, Wisconsin. Event begins at 8 a.m. Hosting club is the Wisconsin Mopar Muscle Club. Again, WMMCMopar@gmail.com or search Wisconsin Mopars on Facebook or WMMC.net. September 21st at the Mopar Swap Meet at the Fox View Lanes in Waukesha, Wisconsin. Hosting club, again, will be the Wisconsin Mopar Muscle Club, and the same information as before. September 27th and 28th. It's the Mopar Showdown at Rock Falls Raceway in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. MoparShowdown.com for more information, or you can email them info@MoparShowdown.com or phone 715-600-2326. Hosting club is the Midwest Mopars. The High Performance Incorporated and Drive Shaft. All right, the High Performance Incorporated High Horse. Let me say this one final time. The High Horse Performance Incorporated and Drive Shaft Shop Modern Street Hemi Shootout Series presented by Siffel Speed and Performance 2025 schedule is now down to 3 events. The first one will not be until August. We've already had several already. It will be the 4th stop on the tour at Milan Dragway in Milan, Michigan, October 17th and 18th at the Maryland International Raceway, and November 15th and 16th, 2025, the 6th and final stop will be at Rockingham Dragway in Rockingham, North Carolina. You can look at all this at their events at hemirace.com. Now, please, prior to going to any event that you're wanting to go to, please make sure you contact the event staff to make sure the show is still going on. So we hope you enjoyed the WaltPar Podcast today. And again, thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you later. Take care and have a good one. This is Scott Gresser, uniting all generations and types of Mopar fans, lovers, enthusiasts everywhere. This is the WaltPar Podcast. Take care.